Hello everybody, and welcome to the training module on technical committees. In today's lesson, we will talk about how participation in standardization activities on an international or European level works, and more in depth about the different committees you can join and how they function. Finally, we will also explain how to find key information about any specific technical committee you'd be interested in. So let's start with participation in international standardization activities. ILNIS, as the main standardization organization in Luxembourg, is a committee member of ISO and IEC, and as such, can apply for membership in all their technical committees or subcommittees if interested. When it comes to voting within ISO or IEC technical committees, the principle is that every country can cast one vote. However, not every member has the right to vote. Indeed, there are two membership types. So ILNIS can act either as a participating member, as a so-called P member, or as an observing member, a so-called O member. As a P member, ILNIS has the obligation to participate and vote on the committee's work, as well as to participate to the meetings. This member status allows us to really influence the process and defend the national interest. As an O member, on the other hand, ILNIS can indeed access the documents of the committee, but only provide comments and participate at the meetings. So it may not vote in favor of any decisions. So while the participation as an O member does not allow us to really influence the process, it does give us the possibility to consult ongoing standardization work and verify that an international standard is not going against the Luxembourgish interests. If this would be the case, ILNIS could always oppose the publication of a standard by voting against the concerned project. So, in order for a decision to be taken, two conditions need to be fulfilled. At least 2/3 of the votes need to be in favor, and there may not be more than 1/4 of the votes against. Besides being a member of ISO and IEC, ILNIS is also a member of the European standardization organizations, namely SCN, CENELEC, and SC. This membership is automatic and results from Luxembourg's membership to the European Union. Since membership is automatic, this means that there might be technical committees where no Luxembourgish delegate is registered. In this case, ILNIS will always vote with abstention on the ballots of the concerned committee. Contrary to the international system, on the EU level, votes are weighted, meaning that the vote by larger countries weighed more than the vote of smaller countries. When it comes to the conditions to approve a ballot on a standard in development, the rules again slightly differ from those at international level. For CENELEC, the majority of the votes has to have been casted in favor, and more than 71% of the weighted votes need to be in favor, not taking into account the abstentions. For SCN, more than 55% of the weighted votes need to have been casted in favor, and the population of the member states which have voted in favor need to represent more than 65% of the population of member states that participated in the vote, again, not taking into account the abstentions. Interesting to note is that SCN and CENELEC provide online voting calculators which can be used to simulate the voting results. In order to give you a better overview of the whole thing, we've set up this table to summarize the differences between the EU and international systems. The two major differences relate to the vote and the adoption of new standards. Indeed, the adoption of standards developed at international level is voluntary, while the EU standards always have to be adopted on national level. Also, as already mentioned, the vote of members is weighted on EU level, resulting in Luxembourg's vote having less weight than the vote of members with bigger populations, as you can see on the graph below. So, for instance, a vote casted by Germany would weight much more than a vote casted by a tiny country such as Luxembourg, while on an international level, every country is equal, so every vote weights the same. So now let's try to get a better understanding of how the system works. So within a standardization organization, we have different levels. On the upper level, we have the technical committee. And in this technical committee, there are members representing their respective countries. Each of these technical committees have a scope, which defines the boundaries within which projects may be developed. Whenever a scope becomes too large, it can be divided in smaller scopes assigned to so-called subcommittees, which actually work exactly the same as technical committees, but on a more narrow scope. The way it is all structured, on the technical committee or subcommittee level, committee members mainly take key strategic decisions, but don't work on the standardization document itself. This document is actually drafted by experts in their field coming together in the so-called working groups. Then, as soon as more delegates from one country want to become a member of a specific technical committee, a so-called NMC or National Mirror Committee is set up. An NMC is basically a committee established to mirror the structure of a technical committee. They are essentially the same as technical committees, but on a national level. The idea is to national build consensus on different matters by getting all the relevant stakeholders together and develop a national position to be presented to the relevant European or international committee. It shall be noted that participation in working groups on an international level, so within ISO or IEC, is strictly reserved to P members. Also, please note that being registered in a specific technical committee doesn't mean that you're automatically registered to all the different subcommittees or working groups under this technical committee. So a separate registration to the subcommittee or working group of your interest is required. For the subcommittees, you can simply fill out the form here listed. And if you want to register for a working group, simply email us to the here mentioned email address. So now let's have a look at the different roles in the technical standardization committees at national level. So on top of each NMC, you have the chairman, which organizes the work of the National Mirror Committee. He ensures that the principle of consensus is respected for any official position provided and performs the votes for the NMC based on the consensual position adopted. And sometimes you can also have a vice chairman, which basically supports the chairman in his or her mission. Besides the chairman and the vice chairman, we have the delegates. So all the national delegates registered in the same technical committee constitute the NMC. A delegate contributes to the technical committee as a representative of Luxembourg and therefore does not speak in his or her name. And each delegate can access the technical committee documents, take position in votes, comment, draft standards, and participate in the national and international technical committee meetings. Then on the working group level, we have the experts and single point of contact. Single point of contact coordinates the work in the working group in which she or he is active and is the contact point with the Luxembourg standardization body. And then in the same working groups, we also have the so-called experts, which work on the actual technical documents and make them move forward through the different steps of the standardization process. Contrary to delegates, they really work in their own individual capacity and don't necessarily represent their country. Now, to wrap up this training, I want you to know that each international or European standardization organization has its own website, where you can find all the information about each technical committee, such as the different members, the scope of the technical committee, the structure, their working program, and so on. This information is accessible to anyone, not only the delegates. And with this, we've come to the end of today's training module on technical committees. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact us by calling us or sending us a little email at normalisation@ilnas.eta.lu. Thank you very much.